The 1990s saw an explosion of black films in multiplexes. As James Greenberg noted in a 1991 article for the New York Times, black filmmakers are being welcomed into the film industry as never before. Just about every studio in town has a project in development with a black director, or wants to. At any given time, it seems you could walk to your local theater and be mesmerized by a biopic like Malcolm X, a comedy like Friday, or a horror flick like Tales from the Hood. Looking back at this boom gives us a glimpse at how far black cinema has come and where the current landscape stands. To understand where this flood came from, we must go all the way back to the beginning. Black people have been involved in cinema since the start of the medium, though often these portrayals were negative, with films such as The Birth of a Nation searing the image of black people being lazy, lascivious, and criminally minded into the consciousness of the American populace. There were a crop of filmmakers during the period trying to offset these negative portrayals, with films catered to black audiences called race movies. Peter P. Jones, Oscar Micheaux, William D. Alexander, and Spencer Williams, alongside production companies like the Lincoln Motion Picture Company, Ebony Film Corporation, Norman Studios, Rail Productions, and the Colored Players Film Corporation, all told stories to show the black community in a positive light during a time of virulent racism. Their works also drew attention to issues such as discrimination and lynchings. But these race films were niche and made largely separate from the Hollywood system, leaving them unseen by those outside of the black neighborhoods and colored-only theaters they screened in, with many of the silent pictures they produced now completely lost. When mainstream Hollywood did move into a more nuanced look at black life with the likes of Hearts and Dixie, Hallelujah, Cabin in the Sky, Carmen Jones, and Porgy and Bess, these ventures were often helmed by white filmmakers, with black directors not getting a chance to tell their own stories until the 70s, as Gordon Parks' Shaft and Ossie Davis's Cotton Comes to Harlem made way for the blaxploitation era, a movement that took its influence from the civil rights and black power movements of the time. This period saw the first time in which black people were gaining control over their own narratives. Black characters were heroes and heroines saving their communities from police, gangsters, and all types of meddlesome forces, sticking it to the man and bringing justice to the community. But they received criticism for their violent and overtly sexualized imagery, with some claiming they glorified crime and projected a flat portrayal of black Americans. With low production cost and high box office potential, major studios quickly took interest in work that otherwise would have been ghettoized to small theaters. Just as the films raked in millions of dollars, so too did they become co-opted and made predominantly by white filmmakers. As Hollywood cinema moved toward big, action-filled spectacle productions, thanks to the success of Jaws and Star Wars, the late 1970s saw blaxploitation die out, leading to a dearth of black films in the mainstream as the 80s came along. The rise of comics Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy slowly changed execs' mentalities regarding black-led productions, as the two proved that audiences would come out in droves to see a film with a black lead. Amidst Murphy's ascension to box office dominance unlike any other black actor previous, with films such as Trading Places and Beverly Hills Cop, came She's Gotta Have It, an intoxicating debut from the 28-year-old Spike Lee. The Harlem-based urban landscape Parks put to celluloid in Shaft was taken up by Lee, this time in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, using a documentary structure, giving an intimate look at sexual relationships amongst young black professionals, who were rendered in full form as humans without a mention of race, with their complicated attitudes towards sex and a burning desire to find purpose driving the narrative. Protagonist Nola Darling is a modern woman outside of conventional stereotypes, rebelling against traditional monogamy to investigate what she really wants. Here Spike expanded the scope of the bygone blaxploitation era to depict a lively community filled with all different types of oddball characters just trying to make their way in life, which is a stark contrast from the way mainstream media portrayed inner-city communities, which frequently relied on tropes of crime and drug-ridden areas with dilapidated buildings. Engrossing $7.1 million on a meager $175,000 budget, Lee's film would plant a seed that would sprout just a few years later. If She's Gotta Have It knocked on Hollywood's door, Spike's third feature, 1989's Do the Right Thing, blew the hinges off. doubling down on his broad look at neighborhood politics and how race affects the way people move in America, this time aiming the camera at interracial conflict on the hottest day of the summer. The assertive camera, mixed with a warm color palette, makes the sun-drenched Bed-Stuy both oppressive and beautiful, illuminating some of the best characters ever put to the silver screen. Each person that occupies space in the story has a distinct feeling that gives the community a sense of depth. The little details make the film rich, like groups of tweens playing with a fire hydrant or the banter between elders on the block, all amounting to a tragedy that leaves us enraged, knowing in part that this could have all been avoided. These early spike joints laid the groundwork for the neo-realist perspective that would dominate the new wave of black cinema, carrying the torch that was left by the blaxploitation filmmakers. Just as Lee's masterpiece set the world on fire, hip-hop became one of the most commercially lucrative genres of music in the United States, crossing over into white spaces and making black art more visible. According to critic Elvis Mitchell, when Hollywood realized that white kids were really into rap, and don't kid yourself, that's the audience the studios are really lusting for, a little light went on. Hey, we can make money from black culture. In 1991, 19 black movies were released by major studios, more than the previous decade total. Rap artists like Tupac, Ice Cube, Will Smith, Ice-T, and Queen Latifah established themselves as stars, alongside traditional actors like Denzel Washington and Whoopi Goldberg. The music played an integral role in some of the period's best-known works, such as House Party and Juice. The two art movements are analogous in many ways. Behind the mic and behind the camera, young black people use storytelling to depict life in their environment in an uncompromised tone, while unveiling aspects of the black experience that had never been highlighted before. In the process, the media tried to associate both with violence, from worries of rap encouraging street crime or riots breaking out during the screening of Boys in the Hood or Malcolm X, but in the end they outlasted many of their critics. Overlapping this was the rise of the indie film. Movies like Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape made Hollywood more willing to invest in small projects that centered around character rather than concept, as these films could provide critical acclaim and most importantly commercial success to studios. The Sundance Film Festival became a playground for Hollywood to scout out young talent and acquire commercially valuable films. Sundance would serve as a launch pad for many integral works of early 90s black cinema, such as House Party, Chameleon Street, Straight Outta Brooklyn, Hanging with the Homeboys, New Jack City, and Daughters of Dust. Add on to that the cost of making a feature film dropping drastically because of technological changes, and young directors like Wes Anderson, Alexander Payne, Darren Aronofsky, and Paul Thomas Anderson were able to get their projects off the ground faster. Black directors would benefit greatly from this new interest in smaller films, with the likes of John Singleton and the Hughes brothers being given millions of dollars to direct their own material by the time they were in their early 20s. And once the floodgates were open, contemporary black life was given added dimensions. One of the most common threads amongst these films is their focus on black masculinity. Coming of Age in the Hood was a trial that didn't just include drugs and violence, but interpersonal hurdles with friends and loved ones, and the ever-looming threat of law enforcement. This scene from Boys in the Hood perfectly encapsulates this. Trey Styles listens from his room as his parents argue over whether he should be able to live with his mother full-time or not, just as a police helicopter surveys the neighborhood. Both in and outside of the home, young black men are faced with challenges that seem insurmountable. Fatherhood was also central to many narratives. South Central and the aforementioned Boys in the Hood were concerned with the roles of fathers, how they mold their sons, and the consequences that come when that void is not filled. We see some boys find that masculine presence in the streets like those in Clockers, but the ones with that figure built in typically fare better than those without. The crack epidemic's devastating impact on the family structure was highlighted frequently. See Cheryl with her neglected baby in Boys in the Hood, Gator in Jungle Fever, and the entire milieu of New Jack City and Fresh. Some didn't involve crime at all, such as Hanging with the Homeboys, which follows a group of guys just trying to have fun on a Friday night. In line with other works of the Black Boom, the focus is on how these men try to get by in such a chaotic environment, which tests their manhoods daily. Comedies like The Wood, and The Best Man tapped into a black middle class that had been booming since the 70s, but never quite made their way to the big screen. Together with the likes of Soul Food, they created a tapestry that sought not to prove the humanity of blacks to whites, but to craft heartfelt narratives that centered blackness. Despite the era being largely male-dominated, films centered on black women broke grounds. Just Another Girl on the IRT is firmly within the New York City of Lee's work, even employing verte filmmaking and fourth wall breaking like in She's Gotta Have It, once again giving us a complex portrayal of a young black woman, this time trying to navigate teen pregnancy amidst the AIDS crisis. These sexual anxieties spill over into Alma's Rainbow, about another blossoming black girl named Rainbow Gold, who as she begins puberty is caught between her bougie mother Alma and artsy Aunt Ruby. The trio all have rich backstories, with endless moments of joy and sadness, that makes the movie tangible. Waiting to Exhale is a warm, multi-generational portrait of middle-class black women trying to navigate their own relationships and disillusionment, giving us a story of the resiliency of female bonds. Daughters of the Dust also puts intergenerational female relationships at the forefront, this time within a picturesque Gullah community fighting between the past and present, foregoing a traditional narrative structure to bring a wholly unique and hypnotic vision to the silver screen. The Watermelon Woman was the first feature film directed by a black lesbian. In investigating the lost history of black Hollywood through the title character, Cheryl Dunye harkens back to an older tradition of black directors like Micheaux, building on a frontier of film language that questions who gets to tell stories. Eve's Bayou inquires about traditional gender roles in memory, this time within a wealthy black family in rural Louisiana. The perspective of black women are shown in intimate detail, some through flashbacks and others through striking visions that feel all too real. Cassie Lemons avoids simplistic characterization in favor of an earthy mood that is mixed with the Southern Gothic tradition, leaving us with a tale we may never get to the bottom of. Baps is a camp film built around two entrepreneurial friends from the Deep South who are placed within an upper-class white society in LA. Once you move past the outer shell of raunchiness, the core finds itself pulling from the same pool of ideas about female bonds that other directors highlighted. Trailblazers like Dunye and Leslie Harris gave a broader portrayal of the lives of black women, where they were not just a sex object or side character for the male protagonist, but as people with their own complex images. The 2000s saw a sharp decline in black-oriented films. While you still had pictures such as Baby Boy, Barbershop, Brown Sugar, Drumline, Coach Carter, and ATL being made, it was nowhere near the pace of the 90s. Hollywood recognized the rising indie market and began buying out independent studios, who were behind some of the wave's most iconic works. Miramax, for example, who distributed Just Another Girl on the IRT and Down in the Delta, were purchased by Disney in 1993. New Line Cinema, who were behind Menace to Society, Above the Rim, Set It Off, and Love Jones, were bought out by Turner Broadcasting in 1994, who merged with Time Warner in 96. As the establishment took over, independent filmmakers were squeezed out of the market. Funding ran out as studios began to chase box office and crossover appeal, which often meant a reliance on formulas, reducing the appeal of authentic black stories. Artists of the period who stuck around like F. Gary Gary and Singleton took up commercial films. The likes of Julie Dash, Ernest Dickerson, Matty Rich, Leslie Harris, Theodore Witcher, and many others were left out to dry, as a lot of their work did not turn a profit and therefore were no longer of use in the new Hollywood landscape. In their place, Tyler Perry became the face of Black Hollywood, with the diet of black movies made by the majors in the aughts largely consisting of white savior dramas like The Soloist, Freedom Writers, Finding Forrester, and The Blind Side. When black cinema rose again in the 2010s, a new generation of auteurs raised on the works of the 90s came to prominence, such as Ryan Coogler, Jordan Peele, Boots Riley, Nia DaCosta, and Barry Jenkins. The films of the boom continued to inspire pieces of black media, as Beyoncé's album Lemonade visually borrowed from Daughters of the Dust, and the spirit of Singleton's filmography hovered over both Fruitvale Station and Straight Outta Compton. Black films saw wider audiences as the likes of Get Out and Black Panther topped the box office, and Moonlight made grounds for the representation of black queer people. So far in the 2020s, films like Nope and Sinners have continued to trek new ground, alongside smaller films like 1001 and American Fiction. While our current times have not produced at the volume of the 90s, black film has grown beyond its once marginal space into a vibrant scene whose benchmarks continue to be raised. And who knows, maybe with the recent success of films by young directors, a new indie wave can rekindle the spirit of the 90s. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. This took me way longer than I was expecting, but I'm happy it's out in the world now. After you like and subscribe, comment down below what your favorite film of this period was. In the meantime, if you click the links down below, you can catch up with me on Letterboxd or Twitter. I'm also thinking about starting a Discord just to talk about movies and share work, so if you're interested, let me know. Peace.